This is typically the world we are in. It is called a startup bubble. What typically founders look at from their side or their perspective is the picture that you see, the yellow circle that you see on the left side of my screen, which I'm sharing, which is purely, that's how I think. As a founder, whatever I work on, I think this is the biggest idea I've ever discovered. And that's the best thing that can rule the world. That's typically the situation I will be in. And the way I look at that idea is very interesting. This part is very interesting. Just listen it over. The way I look at us, such a big idea is at a very least expense. Meaning I just invest, I just do something and I'm done. And the impact, whatever I think is going to happen is like whether I'm successful, I'm failure, it is all about me, my money, my idea, my story, my stuff. So I don't need to really worry on it. Actually, what happens in the startup ecosystem is like, with respect to all the ideas that are working, that are being experimented, tested, ideated, implemented, our idea is actually small. And in reality, the expense we spend on this small idea is actually bigger. It's bigger than the cost of the idea, whatever we think. Because when you launch an idea into an entity has its own administrative charges, has its own charges to survive. So that's how the expense actually grows bigger than what you thought in the idea. And the impact is immense. That's the biggest thing, because it directly impacts the self, the person himself first. Then it impacts the team, whoever is working. Then it impacts the startup, and then it impacts the ecosystem. Because if, let's say, someone does to solve a problem, they take the problem to the next level, and by chance if they fail, everyone will register that a particular problem someone tried to solve has failed. It's not about person A has failed or team of people has failed or the company has failed. So it also has a bigger impact on the overall ecosystem. So that gives a signals, or that creates some kind of I would say surface tremors, or put kind of issues at the surface level for the investors. So let's say if someone has started on e-commerce and failed, the investor don't want to pick up on these e-commerce kind of startups again. So that's how the impact is. So we always think that there's no impact, it's my startup, it's my story and all. But in real, this is how it happens. And this is where the startup bubble is all about. So as founders, we have to understand the entrepreneurship and the spirit. So if you are only understanding the entrepreneurship, you only end up creating the yellow circle. If you end up understanding the spirit, you only create the orange circle. Means you are good, you are passionate, but end of the day, you are more creating an impact, nothing else. So you should have a mix of both, the entrepreneurship as well as the spirit. That is a well balance to handle the startup bubble. And this is a very, very important aspect of why we need to understand the entrepreneurship part and the spirit of the entrepreneurship part. That is where it makes all the difference. So be entrepreneur and have the spirit, to take it to the next level. So you should have a balanced approach of the startup. What is the need of the hour? So to overcome this kind of startup bubble, what is that we have to do? We always been thinking to be the entrepreneur. That's always been the best choice, because we are entrepreneur because we know how to build businesses. We have some spirit, we have the passion, we know we don't give up, we are all this, but we don't, when we don't see the bubble, we are always thinking to be the entrepreneur. But when you see the bubble, you actually start building the entrepreneur. So when you start building the entrepreneur, there are three things that should come to every entrepreneur's mind. One, what is the strategy? Why I should do this? What is that? What is the bigger picture in mind? Where should I land up with this idea? If I starting e-commerce, can I beat Flipkart in the next 10 years? Is it a challenge? Is it a possibility? That's the kind of strategies what I should have. That's a very important ingredient. Second most important ingredient is the business model. How clear am I on positioning my offerings and services or products and services, and how I can monetize on it? Because once you have a business model to your idea, then it can give the wings. Once the business model is set, then only you get the wings to take off. If you don't have the business model, it will be like an ad hoc cash order method. So I manufacture 10 items with my 100 rupees. I sell them at 10% more higher. So I end of the day make a 10% profit. So that's a typical cash book approach. That doesn't solve the problems of today's. We have to give a model, and that model can only give the wings to the ideas and all. And finally, you should know how you are positioning your business. Understand this is the most critical aspect of being the new age entrepreneur. If I don't know how I position my business, then it gives me a lot of challenges going forward on how do I see it and how do I take it forward. So this is typically the need of the hour. So you have to build the entrepreneur in yourself. It is not about thinking to be the entrepreneur. Build the entrepreneur yourself. Then only you can overcome the startup bubble of being the entrepreneur and having the spirit of the entrepreneur. And this is what is the right ingredient mix. Always think in a strategy, always work on a model, and position your business in the right way. These attributes will help you build the entrepreneur. Moving on, how do I do it? I use here one very simple technique. I love this technique because it's been so proven many times. This is it, just practicing. That's it. So the best technique is practicing. And here, it's not like I make an idea, I fail on it, and then I make an idea. That's not the practice. Make an idea with all the things that you have to do. Ensure the idea is all validated, verified, and all. Then you try to scale it up step by step, step by step, step by step. So that's the best way you have to practice. So you can just have this kind of a very good flow. I like this picture, so I always try to use this because he can be the best person who can tell what his practicing is all about. So I always use this picture to motivate about practicing. So it's very simple. So you just have a very kind of a rough flow or a rough chart, but you need to have this kind of a chart to keep yourself practicing so that you know what you're trying to achieve and how you are going to. And the next slide I'm going to bring up is the most important thing. What happens is when you over practice, certain times we do over practice. As a result of over practice, we start competing everywhere. And that's where I say, as an entrepreneur, you should have your goal. You should understand what the problem you're solving. Let 10 people, 10 other founders pick up the same problem. But you focus on what you're solving. You focus on your spirit, your practicing, your flowchart. Don't compete. Don't worry of competition. If you are clear, if you are trying to solve the problem, your solution will always be genuine. Don't worry about it. Because what max I can copy from someone is the idea, but I don't know how to implement it. So I am the person who can drive the implementation, and that's the best. So keep practicing. So that's what the next slide shows us. So there is no need for us to prove as an entrepreneur at every place. But unfortunately, this is the situation right now today. Every startup, the moment they get some hand on it, they start competing everywhere. They start pitching. They are in rush to make some fund. Either the ideology is not, they have not started on the right way, or they're not looking at the right way. So if you already know you are the cheetah, you don't need to race among the dogs. You know what is your track. You know where you can raise. You know what is your capability. As an entrepreneur, this is one very, very important skill. And this skill takes you to the next level. You should always understand there is truth inside of you. And that is what makes you a strong entrepreneur who has a greatest spirit to take the ability and to drive with passion to solve a problem. So this is a very, very important skill. Now let me share why we get into these kind of things, why we try to end up doing competition and all. The other thing, this is the biggest, another issue with most of the entrepreneurs when they start working on their idea. On the left side of the screen, what I'm showing is typically 80% of the entrepreneurs believe that they are in that situation. The orange dot is what they believe is what they know. The gray dot is what they see is what they don't know. But in reality, what others don't know is the tiny dot you see on the right picture, which is at a place. It's a very tiny dot. What you actually know, because you are the person, you understand your problem, you're solving your problem, you've done a lot of research, you've put some effort, you've put some time, your solution is solving a problem, so you actually know a lot than what others know. So this is another reason, don't compete, don't focus on what others startups are. Someone gets funding, let them get funding. Maximum you clap, you cheer. You go back to your desk, work on your problem, focus on what is required, try to get your own fund for your problem to solve. Because fund is an enabler that can help an entrepreneur to solve a problem. It is not everything, or it is not the end goal. So this is what I would say, get rid of the imposter. This you are imposing on yourself. Most of the times, entrepreneurs impose on themselves saying that I know very little, I don't know a lot of things, because they are looking at 100 startups getting funded, 100 new startups are starting. There are so many bigger people are getting associated with few startups. Suddenly the startup gets into the limelight. So this is actually creating a lot of disturbance. Let that happen. That is the part of the ecosystem. What you are is on the right of the screen, which I'm showing. You are among the best knowledge you are having. And what others may be the dot until they explore and they find out what you are. Okay. So let's not get into this kind of self-imposition on ourselves that we are lagging behind on our startup. We are not getting the funds. Our